Well, I'm going to start with Richie. I think one of my first goals is to stir up some intellectual curiosity. So students sometimes come, I think more towards the rare side, come knowing why they're at St. John's and really interested in pursuing some thread of knowledge. And so that means the rest of the time is trying to stir some up. Just talk about your expectations for the course. And I think you've said it would never have occurred to you to write about your band to start with. Can you tell us the story of sort of finding that?
Yeah, well, when we first started the class, we were told to write about something that was really relevant to us, and we could use our major as one of the more common things. And my major is business law, and at first I was like, okay, I'll probably write about this. And as time went on, I thought I'd write about my band, and it's something I've been a part of for about 8 years now, and I thought it would be much easier to write about. And as the course went on, one of the things we started to use was these EBSCO sources. And they were really helpful because they had a little search bar to put in specific words. And as I started using it, I found it harder and harder to find specific things relevant to me and my band. A lot of it was professional work, like teachers, schools, piano, and all that.
And so I'm going to have, and then there's a reading bibliography, everything they read in the class. I have them write a larger project called a scholarly personal narrative, where they tell a personal story and they weave in scholarly research, and then they make a documentary film. So I'm going to have Richie read from his naive musician now researching for fame.
When Professor Torgerson had us write papers on something we were interested in, I was stumped for a little bit. Nothing came to me, and after we went around the room to discuss unique things about us, I realized I could write about my band because no one would have the insight like me. Once I realized this class became a lot more interesting and I had a lot more to research. We were supposed to incorporate writing into our work. Now this seemed terrible at first. I could not think how to incorporate guitar riffs and live sound into a paper. Then it dawned on me I could use writing lyrics and how to get my band's name out there as 2 focal points for the semester. When we first started research using EBSCO sources, it was very hard for me to find information. When I talked to Professor Torgerson about how I was having trouble getting information off EBSCO, he told me to try using different keywords. When I did, a plethora of information was at my fingertips.
So does when he puts his video up, and it's on YouTube and on Facebook, that goes with kind of what you're thinking? Are you thinking of something different? Yeah. What's that for?
Yeah, I mean, right, that's what we're thinking. So we're thinking about e-portfolios, right? I think Derek's talking about that, but we're also thinking about blogs, YouTube videos, like some of my students do public service announcements. Yeah. Roseanne's books, letters to the editors of newspapers, sort of like any place where your work is now public and it has an audience beyond, the people in your class.
And I think what I really love about your video, and actually about the paper you just read, you change what people think comp should be. Additional view of what composition study is and what we should be doing in the classroom. And you turn it on its head in a lot of ways when you talk about songwriting and the connections, and I really love it. I can't wait to watch the video, and I think it can fit in perfectly.
One thing that really struck me too about what you wrote and what you read is that you sort of began with this nostalgic look back to vinyl. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then kind of thinking through new ways of how you distribute and advertise and do all of this kind of thing, which almost has to happen through this digital technology because that's the way that it's done now. And so your music and the writing, the nature of the writing that we're sort of doing in this course and that Bill has kind of showcased is making a similar move too. And I just wanted to kind of note that because I think, on the one hand, with your panel, it's like you're putting writing out there, and there's almost this kind of nostalgic tug about what writing, does and how we leave things behind as we explore these new spaces and everything. Yeah. So I thought that was a really important part of the talk.
Yeah, today. And I found that when I was looking through that article, that was one of his big points he was bringing up, Tom McCourt, that as time's going on, everything, people are moving past it rather quickly. There was 8 tracks, cassettes, CDs, now there's iTunes, and there's illegal download, and you just go, oh, I want this song, and one of the easy things people do is get it off YouTube. So there's a lot of fast things people do really quickly, and there's really oh, I like this song, let me just get it. And then within a month or so, the song's overplayed and people are bored of it.
Imagine how funny it is for me to meet Rich, who invokes all these bands from the heart of when I was in high school. So it's
Right.
pretty, something
Those
that-
things that only the
It's
basement.
different. So Daniela, I guess tell them about what your major is and how you became that major and when you were a little kid.
My major is speech pathology, and I fell in love with it when I was like 7 years old because my cousin Angela is a speech pathologist and audiologist, and she also came to St. John's, which is the reason why I wanted to come to St. John's. And when I was younger, she used to come over because she had to do internships and stuff, and she had to write like a lot of papers about speech pathology, and she used to come over and she used to like ask me for like help, so I used to help her, and then she was writing in phonetics, which is like a type of writing. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's alien writing, so I always wanted to write just like that. So when I got the chance.
Daniela showed me how on dictionary.com you
Yeah.
can also get the phonetics. I didn't know that. So I'm asking Daniela just to read an excerpt from her. She ended up, there's a lot of flexibility in the class to sort of make the assignments yours, and we kind of agreed that she wouldn't do a literacy narrative and that she would do this longer project on speech pathology. So she's going to read you a little excerpt starting, I don't know if you care, I'll move that over a little. But anyway, okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, everyone has a way of how they found out what they wanted to be when they were entering college. Some went blindfolded into a major, or some took tests online that gave them the best career that fit with their interests. But it wasn't like that for me. I more or less knew what I wanted to major in since I was about 7 years old. My cousin Angela was in college and needed to do a project on a child, so she picked me. I remember having to read a book out loud while she wrote in phonetics. At the time, it looked like alien writing to me, but I knew from that I wanted to write alien too. She explained to me why she was writing in phonetics and why I had to read out loud for her, but I didn't care. She was one of my favorite cousins and closest to me. At the age of 7, I went around telling teachers, family members, and friends that I wanted to be a speech pathologist. When she comes to visit, I sit with her daughter, Adriana, and teach her things like how Angela taught me. But when sitting with Adriana, I noticed she acts a little different than how I used to act. Considering she was born in 2004, she's very bright for her age. One time she came over, took me into my room, got my laptop, turned it on, and started showing me all these websites she visits daily. She took me to Nickelodeon, Disney, and Cartoon Network. And when she got bored of playing games on those websites, she would go to google.com and type in princesses she admired and looked up pictures of them. I was in complete shock. How could an 8-year-old know how to do all this? Where did she learn it from? Michael Bittman, who wrote Digital Natives, a New and Old Media and Children's Outcome, explains how children are now considered digital natives, which I couldn't agree more. He explains the current generation of young children has been described as digital natives, are having been born into ubiquitous digital media environment.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
One thing that was interesting about Daniela is that from the very beginning, she said, I hate technology, I don't like technology, I'm not good with technology. And then she's one of the only people to make her own banner across the top. And there's a little, even though, well, just to put this picture here and put that little welcome over there, you know that even though that maybe looks simple, that's I couldn't do that right now. And then she also wrote about technology, so that was very funny. That she
Using this technology as opposed to using, the technologies that I'm using,
Yeah.
which are papers and pens. Like, how does that, do you think that changed the way you thought about this writing? Or
Not really, no, because it was like, I don't know, there's like different technology. I'm just not good with computers and stuff.
Mhm.
But then the AAC device, which speech pathologists use, is something like different. Like when I was doing this website, it was for me difficult because like I always had my friends do like my Facebook or MySpace like pages and stuff. So like doing this, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do it? And then it wasn't even like handed to you. It was like numbers and letters that like codes I had to put in, and I was just like, oh my god.
And we were talking about writing that travels outside the classroom,
Yep.
right? And one way to do that is to use these and make them public, right? And to accomplish something public. And I have anxiety about that as a teacher because I don't want to force my students to make their writing public if they don't want to. Obviously, Rich had a real clear reason to put a video up on YouTube,
right.
and he wanted to. But and my students didn't make videos this semester, but they've made public podcasts before, and I wasn't really thinking about those issues, so I didn't like. But now I'm very concerned with forcing my students who don't really volunteer to take this class, because you have to take it, to go public with their writing. So I'm between public and private school. That's all right.
It's interesting to me how Rich's project with technology and all the questions about privacy was one that, you know, you decided not to talk about law and instead talk about your own thing. You had your own kind of built-in audience for that already, or you sort of knew that. And Daniela, you, I think, really kind of took on your profession. You talked about how you became interested in it, and I can almost see your portfolio being a professional portfolio with that limited audience and something that you would present, you know, to get a job, to go to grad school or something like that. So those are two very different, I don't know if it speaks directly to what you're saying, but there are two very different reasons, I think, for the technology,
Yeah.
with
And-
different questions.
So there's no way to answer this question wrong. But, so Rich and Daniela, did you feel like you had options when it came to how public or private your work was?
I mean, I guess, yeah, because I mean, even when I put up the video on YouTube, they now have like settings up, private, public, or like only subscribers. And I mean, I made mine public, and I mean, there's a lot of other places you could put it too. That I put it on Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr. I would just send it to people, say, hey, do you like this? So, I mean, I guess you could figure out a way to like keep it private if you wanted to.
So if you didn't, do you feel like there were people in the class whose work was mostly private to the class, or do you feel like there wasn't? Like, I have my own answers to those questions, but I'm just curious, like, what you heard. And
I'd say yes. I mean, I didn't get to hear every like different person's like specific paper on one thing or another, but pretty sure you could find a few papers in there that people wrote about something like very specific to them, and they're like, okay, well, this is just something I wanted to do for class. Like, I don't need my friends to see it. I don't need my family to see it, and like.
so Danielle, you never really even considered, like, I want this private, I want this public, I don't
No.
care. It's just like it's just going to be private, and you're fine with that, and you don't think about it much.
No, I don't think about it much.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, and is that the case always? Like, you don't really think about like, you know, how private and public your Facebook?
No, that I'm like, that is private.
Yeah.
But for this, there's nothing, you know, I'm hiding in it, so might as well just have it out there.
Public in St. John's.
Like, if they Googled your name, would it
Pop up?
pop up?
Not that I know of, I've tried it, and
Okay.
only my Facebook
Okay. only
pictures,
Facebook.
that's it,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
What would you do differently next semester, Bill?
I was okay with the way the portfolios went. It was troubling to hear them talk about how big a part of the class they thought it was, when I thought it wasn't such a big part. I did some experimenting with Twitter. For example, we tweeted golden lines from articles, and we tweeted back and forth, which, especially with their class, once they got their noses in their computers, I couldn't get them back out of there, really. They just weren't listening to me at all. So one thing I might do is have them follow, identify some people on Twitter they want to follow, and find some way of regularly pointing back to them. Daniela and I, we kind of had that. I don't know how we got on that same question, but we did a search for speech pathology on Twitter when we were going over this portfolio, and she found job posting on Long Island for speech pathologists. So that something like that. And then I think also giving homework such as have 3 or 4 images that you want to upload to your portfolio, have a text that you're going to put up, and then there being like a demonstration where everybody has their computers and we can kind of help. Adam Banks from Digital Griots, he calls, I'm sure it's older, but he called them lab days. So that was a phrase I used and liked. We read his About Me. He calls it something else. We read his About Me. I think they all thought it was strange because it had no capital letters. It was very poetic and hip hop lyric-like.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the excerpt from the Coming to Writing panel at St. John's University. Special thanks to Bibbin George, who was a former student of mine and on the video camera. My website is thetorg.com, and you can follow up and watch maybe some of the related videos and see some student portfolios and examples of student work, and I hope that you'll be in touch. Take care.